journey beyond imposter syndrome. This is where I invite you into a space where high achievers and spiritual leaders converge to redefine success and self-worth. By sharing transformative stories and engaging with thought leaders, this podcast serves as a roadmap for navigating the complexities of imposter syndrome. It's an intimate look into overcoming personal barriers tailored for those who value wisdom, leadership, and intuition in business and life. Join me at the Humble Warrior Podcast with Alani Bankhead. Welcome to the Humble Warrior Podcast. I'm your host, Alani Bankhead, and today is really a special day for me. I'm so excited to introduce to you my amazing guest, Chelsea Ritter-Soronen. Chelsea and I first met back 3 years ago in 2022, where we were both TEDx Pearl Street speakers, and she did this incredible TED Talk on how pavement art can impact your community. But that's not all. So Chelsea is actually a multidisciplinary visual artist, business owner, and professional public arts consultant. She's the owner and principal artist at Chalk Riot, a mural company specializing in pavement art. She's also an American delegate to the U.S.-Japan Leadership Program, which is a program which fosters fellowship, global peace, prosperity, stability, and sustainability in the 21st century. JFK Center for the Performing Arts, Greenpeace, you name it. She has done all of it. She's got such an incredible resume, and I'm so excited to talk with her today. Thank you, Chelsea, so much for being on the show. It's really exciting to have you here.
I am so glad that we finally have made this happen. And, it's the perfect example of we never know where those little sparks of connection can lead, because here we are 3 years later. And it's so important to utilize all these channels of communication and connection that we have in this crazy fast-paced world, because you never know when they can lead.
Oh my gosh, 100%. And I want to deep dive into your story, but I want my listeners to know, because they're like government justice types, like they might be in psychology or whatever. So why I want you to pay attention to Chelsea's episode today is because Chelsea really opened my perspective on what's possible in terms of career success and joy. And there was a key point in her TEDx that really blew my mind open, which was that actually they had studies that talked about the impact of street and sidewalk art on safety in transportation. So there was some statistic like there's less, like 20% less accidents or something at like
Over half.
over half. Insane, because there's art, right? Because like traffic slows down to look at the pretty art and stuff like that. And so for my listeners, I think her story is super important for you to reflect on, because Chelsea has defined success on her terms, and that's something that we really struggle to do in a world that tells you what success should look like. So, okay, I'm gonna stop talking. Chelsea, please tell us about you.
Sure. What would you like? Where should I start? The art story? The chalk
Wherever
art
you want,
story?
wherever you want.
Sure. Well, I'll start in my present. I live in Washington, D.C., and I've been here for almost 6 years now, where I love it. I chose it. I was on the West Coast before and knew that I wanted to be on the East Coast, and chose DC because of its thriving art scene and everything we have here that is worthy of love, such as public parks, amazing museums, diverse neighborhoods. It's an incredible place. And I think in today's narratives with the media and the way, it's really important to emphasize that this is an amazing city with beautiful, passionate, driven, accomplished people that are just living their lives. And I'm happy to be a part of it. I own a small business here called Chalk Riot, which, as you said, is a mural company that specializes in art on the ground. And that is a very strange, small niche that we have found ourselves in now for almost 12 years. I started the business in 2013 when I was living in St. Louis. And back then, it was much more difficult to make public art happen in that city. It was just on the beginning of kind of this renaissance, this new wave of mural art as it exists today. And so other artists, friends, and I wanted to create art in public, and we chose chalk because there were no rules or laws against that. And so we could just go out and be artistically free. And one thing led to another. The very short version is that, over Several chalk murals later, people eventually started asking how much for that, and it just grew from there.
Oh my gosh, that is so amazing. Okay, so let's back up for a second
Yeah.
because I love how you're like, I just sort of fell into it, right? And like, I love the idea of we chose chalk because there were no laws or rules against it, which is important. And I
Sure.
totally appreciate that, right? But the story before that, like, how did you even get into public artistry and that whole thing?
That's a great question. So, my formal artistic training is in costume design for theater. And when I was in undergrad, I thought that was going to be my full-time path and career. I went to a really strict theater arts conservatory called Webster University in St. Louis and found myself very burned out by the theater by my senior year, but of course knew that I wanted to continue an artistic path and started hanging out with my scene painting friends and set design friends, started helping out on their weird overnight shifts, and realized that painting and drawing very big felt really good in my body and in my soul and in my mind. And I started to make this connection that murals are wonderful because it allow like the bigger you can paint, the easier it is to capture big feelings and big thoughts and big questions and explore those. And so I realized this kind of freedom in my body when I could pursue that. And I got my undergrad degree in 2008 at the peak of financial crisis, and no theaters had any money anyways. And so I was like, I did as any recent graduate does, or anybody just sorting out a life transition, and started working in hospitality, working in coffee shops and restaurants, and started hustling murals that way as a means of extra income, really. So painting lots of entryways in large houses and restaurants, and slowly picked it up from there. I was lucky to find some mentors that helped guide that process. And I love public art because it is theater. Like, you're just creating sets for theater, but everybody's a part of it, you know? So theater teaches you so much. I wish everybody could work on one theater production in their life just to experience the processes of teamwork, of managing deadlines and strict budgets, of multi-tiered communications and multiple visions combining into one grandiose vision that is the goal. Like, we can learn so much from theater, and I just really felt at home in the public art world because to me it was just more of the same in all of those senses. Does that
Oh
make
my
sense?
gosh. No, yeah, you're making perfect
Yeah.
sense. You're just kind of blowing my mind right now. So, well, because I'm super curious, like, so it's funny because I just told someone this story the other day, but I did my first board in 2016.
hmm
And I just left active duty. So everything is so regimented and there's policy and laws, right? Like there's just no real room for creativity because the
Yeah.
structures are already so solid.
Yeah.
And my friend invited me to a vision board party and I was like, well, okay, like I'll go have some wine, you know? But I literally was like, I'm gonna do it on the laptop, like PowerPoint. And in hindsight, it's ridiculous because that year my goal was to be more creative and here I am
hmm
using a PowerPoint, which is like the least creative thing ever, right? But that's where I had to start. But to your point, like you're really in tune with what your body's telling you. And the
hmm
idea that hanging out with my set design friends made me realize that it felt really good in my body and soul to paint really big. And then as you did more of it, you realize that the bigger you paint, the easier it is to capture these big thoughts and questions.
hmm
So, do you mind just talking me through like the inner workings of your brain in terms of when you're doing these big murals and you're thinking through these big thoughts and these big questions, like what does that look like for you?
Well, recently in March, I was lucky to be invited to the Beaumont Mural Festival in small Beaumont, Texas. And in this small town, they welcome muralists from all over the world and all over Texas to convene and create this annual public art gallery. And during that time, I was in a very stressful point that we won't go into now, but business was stressful, personal life was stressful, and we have to navigate these things as small business owners, right? Where sometimes you just have to like deal and sort. And I had I had arrived in Texas with a sketch that I had created months ago that didn't feel accurate anymore. And thankfully, because it's a festival, it's not like a private commission or there's not a company involved. So there's more creative freedom in the process for these festivals, thankfully.
Sure.
And um, I more or less threw the sketch out and just freestyled. And this was a, almost three-story building. And I knew that I knew the feeling, the essence that I wanted to capture, which was this need for what I would call like radical solidarity, radical love, radical peacemaking that we need right now. And that's all I could think about. And so I started with one huge flower that was like probably 7 feet tall, as high as I can reach on a stepladder, and just started with that, stepped back, stared at it, made sense of it, confirmed that that's the route that I wanted to go, and then that eventually gave me direction. But my favorite thing about working in the public realm is that whether you're on a wall or especially on the ground, this is a really intimate process. You're up close and personal with this structure that somebody built, that a team of people built either very recently or very long ago. And those walls, like it's that classic saying of if these walls could talk, right? Like those walls see everything, they hear everything. Those walls have regular neighbors and visitors, even if they don't live in that building, they're passing by it every day. And all of that contributes to these designs that I make.
Mm. Oh, that is so good. And actually, that makes so much sense. And your process sounds very intuitive. How did you develop that as an artist? Like for you to be able to imagine a starting point and then take a step back, take it all in. And you said, I confirmed that's where I wanted to go. How have you been able to hone that intuition and how do you know when it's talking to you?
Mhm. What's really lucky in public art is that you also receive feedback from passersby, right? So that's probably the most defining difference from working in a studio or gallery setting is that as soon as you put color on a wall, somebody's going to tell you if they love it, they hate it, or if they think you should have gone a different direction. And that's not to say that we have to listen to every single person's opinion, but it can be really affirming when it's positive. And so I think that's a huge signifier. And it's so unique. Like sometimes I forget this. Like imagine if you're just at your computer working on a PowerPoint and you had a stranger just come up to you out of nowhere behind your desk, be like, "That's really good, Alani." Like come right up behind you and be like, I don't know about that. I don't know about that you just made. I think the colors could be different. That photo isn't really right. And that's what people do to muralists. They offer their input whether you ask for it or not. But in general, it can be a really positive tool that we can learn to work with.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that is so good. And it's such a perfect segue because I wanted to come back to something you also said earlier about public art is theater, but it's just
Yeah.
everyone's on stage, right?
Yeah.
So this theme keeps coming up of like connection to everyone and everything around.
Mhm.
So whether it's the individuals that want to give their feedback or you like working through these very big thoughts or very big questions or emotions or
Mhm.
like paying homage and respect to the buildings that are adjacent or that you're even working on, right?
Mhm.
How does the work that you do play into that public art is theater thought in terms of like how does your work connect with other people aside from the feedback, right?
Mhm.
But what is the impact of your work that you've seen?
Hmm. So that was I think the first question I heard was,
It had
can you
to,
confirm?
yeah, the first question had to do with public art is theater, and I was talking about
Yeah.
like the connection,
Yeah.
like because I think you bring up a really interesting thought around there is a much bigger picture. Like we see ourselves as so separate from each other, but I don't think that's actually true. And,
Yes, totally
especially when you
agree.
talk about like the metaphysical, like you can get into like this like laptop is different particles of light, right? It's
Hmm.
just it manifests differently than like this microphone does or whatever it
Hmm.
might be. And I think a lot of people are really craving the sense of like, where do I fit in the world? Like,
Hmm.
am I truly connected? I mean, there's so much disconnection right now. And I
Yes.
think your work does such an amazing job of providing that stage and that platform so that everybody can come together and see their place in the connection that we have to each other. So I guess really the question has morphed now. Like, where did that come from? I mean, it's such a fascinating
Yeah.
idea. Like, how did you come up with
Yeah.
that?
I think it's really natural because working in public, it's very instinctive to me to pay attention to how people move through that space, especially for ground murals, right? Especially for ground murals. The perfect example is in downtown Silver Spring, which is a suburb here in DC. There's a pedestrian plaza that used to be a roadway. Now, after COVID, they closed it off to cars, and it's this thriving public space where people skateboard and vend at markets and just stroll around while they shop. And it's this really active area. And we have the honor of repainting it every year with a new design to keep it fresh and energizing. And each of those designs are literally informed by hours of observation of my team and I sitting on the curb or like having coffee there, just watching. And then we're going to create artwork on that ground that encourages that same flow because it is definitely not my role as an artist to change or disrupt that flow. It is my role as an artist to enhance that flow, to improve that flow, to make it a more enjoyable experience. And so for wall murals and for ground murals, I want our pieces to reflect the area, to enhance the area, and feel like they belong there and not like stick out like a sore thumb. That's my personal approach.
Totally.
Yeah,
Oh my gosh. Well, that's really fascinating because honestly, I never would have even considered that you and the team sit and observe.
absolutely. Yeah,
I
that's the
mean,
best part. It's one
yeah,
of the
like,
best parts,
I
just
mean,
people watching.
it makes so much sense because it's not
Yeah,
like you're coming into this space and you're just creating whatever you want. Like the
yeah.
art that you're doing actually integrates what happens there and the
Hmm.
needs of the individuals, right?
Hmm.
And I bet it probably even enhances or brings out some capabilities that maybe they hadn't noticed were necessities.
Absolutely. And to notice, and one of my goals is always, especially in ground murals, for people that pass through them to notice little small details that they didn't notice before. For instance, if we paint, I don't know, a sunshine around a manhole cover, did they ever notice that manhole cover before? But now they do. If we drip paint onto the sidewalk, we've created a ritual of like taking our thumbprints and making them into little tiny hearts. And then occasionally on social media, somebody will tag us and be like, "Look at this little heart I found on this giant Chalk Riot mural." So it's a little moment of reflection and magic in somebody's daily life that hopefully just connects them to that moment and their surroundings, but also encourages them, like almost subconsciously encourages them to look for more moments of magic like that.
Ooh, I
Right.
love that so much.
Yeah.
Okay, that brings me to my next question because you
Yeah.
mentioned magic. So, what are your core values? Is magic one of them?
I think curiosity is one of them.
I love that.
Curiosity is absolutely one of my core values and of the business, especially in this divided world. It is more important than ever that we stay curious and ask more questions instead of making broad, sweeping statements, making assumptions. These are the things that lead to division. And the opposite of that is remaining curious, even when it's things that we don't understand or instinctively disagree with. I want to know what's at the core of that. For sure.
100%. Curiosity
Yeah.
is such a magical tool for so many different reasons.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I love that so much. Okay, I need to talk some practical stuff with you for a second because
Let's get
I
into it.
know that there's a humble warrior who's like, I want to do art or I want to pursue a creative career, but there
Hmm.
is no money in it. So,
Mm.
so I'm curious how for that person that is
Yeah.
listening and is like, oh my gosh, I'm so inspired by this, but I don't know how to get started. Like, I don't know how I'm
Hmm.
going to feed myself. You got any tips or
Hmm.
input on what is waiting on the other side of that fear?
Absolutely. So I'm gonna say, all right. My first response to that in this moment is the simple fact that my small business here in our nation's capital is actually able to offer freelance work to people that have lost their jobs due to these budget cuts. So it really has erased the stereotype that there's no money in arts. And this is not to say the arts are in a dire moment with
Sure,
NEA funding being stripped, et cetera, et cetera. We
sure.
could go on forever. It's a whole other conversation. However, thanks to our very strong networks at our small business, our talented and skillful team and collaborators, and our ability to help solve problems for cities and work with urban planners, we're able to stay afloat right now. And we're able to offer work to people that don't have it.
Yeah.
And if that doesn't tell you about the strength of the creative economy in this country, I don't know what will.
Oh my
Um,
gosh.
and I'll also say that in 2020, when we had our recession due to COVID, that was Chalk Riot's busiest year we've ever had because there was so much enthusiasm for getting outside, for coming up with creative ways to engage with your community in the neighborhood. And so more people called us than ever. Erase the stereotype, erase the mindset that there is no money in the arts because there is money in the arts. And what's key to that, I will say what's key and part of Chalk Riot's strategy, which helps us thrive on the business sense, is that most of our money doesn't come from the arts sector, it comes from other sectors. So I'm a big believer as a business owner in cross-sector collaboration. So our contracts come from departments of transportation, from Fortune 500 companies that want to adorn their campuses, from major NGOs that are working on campaigns for the social good that want to create awareness of that. So we're not really grant applicants per se very often. We're not selling work in the traditional sense like online or at
Sure.
markets, but that cross-sector collaboration is absolutely key.
Oh,
Yeah.
I love that so much.
Yeah.
Which brings us to, my favorite topic is self-doubt and
Ooh,
imposter syndrome.
let's get into
So,
it.
I mean, you have this really beautiful business, this really beautiful mission. You get to work across sectors to do this incredible work that brings connection and
Mhm.
curiosity to the world. So, did you ever have any doubts when you were getting into this work?
I have doubts every year. I have doubts. Being a small business owner makes you face it every day. Um, that is the shortest answer I can give. There is no security in owning your own business,
Mm.
but as we were just talking about, there is also now no security in having a quote secure government job or all of these other traditional pathways. So I think that's actually been a bit of a mental balm this year, is reminding myself that whenever I'm feeling the doubts, especially with like our up and down economy right now, that nothing is ever really secure, and we can zoom all the way out and apply some Buddhist philosophy that nothing is permanent and everything is always changing, and we are not in control of everything that we think we are in control of. And so what we can be in control of is our to-do list at the beginning of the day,
Yeah.
taking care of our bodies and our minds, nurturing the relationships that nurture us, and doing anything and everything with those three things that we can. And so I think, but yeah, and doubt has entered a lot of times in these cross-sector spaces. Right now we're thriving in the transportation space, but it took a couple years of me being a weirdo in these rooms that were not used to having an artist present. And that has felt extremely vulnerable to be to know that I belong in the room, but also knowing that I don't have the experience or the accolades that maybe other people in that room do. However, when we're invited to a space, or when we've forced our way into that space, I should say forced, when we've insisted on room and being in that room, that in and of itself is an accomplishment.
Huge,
So,
huge. Oh my gosh.
yeah,
And I do want to talk about that. So we're
yeah,
digging in the layers.
yeah.
So how do you insist on getting in the rooms? Like, how do you get access to the rooms? Like, I mean, I don't
Mm,
need all the secret sauce, but just in
yeah.
terms of, because, for most people to start from zero and jump to one,
Hmm.
it's such a like, well, how do I start that? And
Hmm.
a lot of times with the people I work with, I'm like, call them, ask
Yeah,
them,
yeah.
and but that the idea of that, I think to your point, brings them back to, but who am I to call them and what do I have to offer,
Hmm.
right? And all that stuff. So
Hmm.
how do you, or how did you get over that initial
Hmm.
mental hurdle
Hmm.
to insist that you guys belonged in these very important
Hmm.
conversations?
I think I'm always like, I really embrace networking as a full-time job. And I'm lucky to live in DC where that is very much a cultural ethos here as well.
Totally.
Um, but my tip for that, and this is really something I learned upon moving to DC too, is that when you ask for a meeting or a coffee with somebody, know why you're doing it because nobody wants their time wasted. So if I'm trying to, what's an example? I want to think of like a non-real world example. Like if I'm trying to open a coffee shop, but I have no experience in coffee, but I really see the vision. I'm not gonna waste a barista's time just talking about the weather, talking about what they like to do, talking about their life story. I'm gonna have a 15-minute conversation, say, what do you love about this? What is the biggest challenge about this? And can I, what can I give you for your time? Thank you so much. That might be a weird offhand example, but
Nope.
know what you want out of those meetings. Know specifically who can help you achieve those goals, and also the baby steps of relationships. Maybe you can't get to the CEO right off the bat, but who knows the CEO? Who is
Yes.
connected to that person, right?
Yes.
It's like it's we're in DC, it's lobbying, you
Oh,
know?
100%.
It's
One,
like it's
yeah,
just lobbying.
DC
Yeah.
is so like it's all networking and drinking, and the
Yes.
first question is, "What do you do?" Right? And
Totally.
and I'm out in Montana now, so it's a completely different landscape.
Oh,
I,
wow.
I do miss the mental sharpness of DC. Like
Yeah.
everybody there is so brilliant and driven
Yeah.
100% of the time, and that has its own struggles. But
Yeah.
I know exactly what you're saying because DC is a place, it's so alive with people wanting to change the world. And
Yeah.
you're right, that does happen one conversation at a time. And all you have
Yeah.
to have is the courage to say,
Yes.
can we do a 15-minute coffee? Right.
Yeah.
So for the listener, if you're not in DC in Networking Central,
Hmm.
one of my favorite tools is LinkedIn. If there's a
Oh my
company I
gosh.
love, I'll like search for the company and literally add everybody and just start like messaging. And I'm
Hmm.
like, can I get 20 minutes of virtual coffee? And I'd love to hear about what you do,
Hmm.
right? And I've hired people that way. I've gotten people hired that way. Some of my
Hmm.
favoriteest people in the world, I only know on LinkedIn.
Yep.
But the point is that, people hear networking a lot, but I think sometimes it doesn't really sink in until you hear stories like yours, right?
Hmm.
Of no, it's personal connections, and then that gets you a coffee, and then
Yeah.
maybe you have to follow up down the road, and maybe they don't respond to your email or your text
Hmm.
message, and then you have to follow up, right? Like there's
Yeah.
all these tiny little steps that you take towards creating the life and career that you want.
Hmm.
And if, to your point, you understand your why and
Hmm.
your intent behind it,
Hmm.
right? And you're passionate about it, like you're going to be unstoppable. I mean, even
Hmm.
as a small business owner, I know exactly what you mean about it's hard to be a small
Yeah.
business owner, but I would much rather have this hard than
Yes.
W-2 hard any
Yes.
day,
I agree.
any day. So now coming back to success,
Yeah.
how does Chelsea define success?
Mm. I feel successful when I feel proud. And so that could be anything small or monumental. It could be, man, especially being a small business owner, sometimes I feel proud because I did the dishes, I cleaned the house, and I turned everything in on time on my deadlines list. Like, and that is an accomplishment. And I feel proud of that, and that feels successful. And I am a big believer that lots of little successes lead to big success, of course. So I think not underestimating those small moments of pride. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that
Yeah.
is so beautiful. And, I've actually never had a guest say that. So when you feel
Hmm.
proud, right? Because that indicates alignment with who you were always meant to be,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
It's the idea of I overcame my doubts. I put one foot in front of the other. I created this thing that didn't exist before, and that makes me feel proud. So
Yep.
then as an artist, when we talk about impact. So I know, like, I'll give the example of my space to illustrate
Hmm.
the point, but I work in justice. So yeah, we might get like verdicts in terms of like seeking justice for someone who's been wronged or something like that.
Hmm.
But a lot of the work I do is proactive. So I might do an operation where suspects are arrested for wanting to commit certain very egregious things.
Mm.
But I'll never know how many kids were saved as a result of that work, right?
Mhm.
So it's like this very spiritual ether of like, there are ripples that I'm never going to see. And that sometimes can be frustrating for people working in social impact spaces. It's not
Totally.
like construction where you like have an open field and then you have a beautiful building at the end of it, right?
Totally.
So for you, in moments when you feel like maybe you're not getting the feedback that like generates that pride, right? And that like
Hmm.
feeling of success,
Hmm.
like what do you do to
Hmm.
fill that hole or that void to keep you going?
That's such a great question. And it's something that we get to ruminate in every winter because we're very seasonal. So every
Sure.
winter, I come back to this and think about what will be impactful this year and how was the last 9 months and where are we going and where have we been? And man, especially art is one of the hardest things to quantify.
Yeah.
How do you quantify beauty or adornment? Like how do you do that? I think that at Chalk Riot specifically, our goal is to improve people's days. So, people jumping through an elaborate 50-foot hopscotch that we made, people skateboarding down a mural that we painted. Um, Honestly, if people are just moving through those spaces with a little bit more joy, um, then we've done our job well. And again, that's hard to quantify,
Yeah.
but there have been moments where I'm seeking reflection or introspection, and I can go to one of our job sites and just like hang out, get a coffee, and just see people just simply moving through the space. And I think it's really important to zoom out. It's so easy. And that's what public art really fosters too, because like to get the whole picture, you have to physically move away. And a lot of art, I feel you're hunched over this and you're like zoomed in on the details. But yeah, I think that's my answer. To know that if we can improve the life of one person for one moment in their day, then we've done our job well.
Oh my gosh, that is so good. And
Yeah.
you honed in on a tool that I just this morning was talking to a client about. So this
Mm.
is an architect, and they were feeling a little bit of that like, what's the impact, but the
Mm.
reality is that because we don't inherently get that feedback loop closed,
Hmm.
sometimes you do have to use a little bit of energy and effort to go back and
Hmm.
close the loop. So for
Oh,
you,
wow.
going back to the space and just sitting with your delicious coffee gives you the
Yeah.
chance to observe the impact of the space and the work that you guys did.
Yeah.
And so this client actually, I'd given them an assignment to go back to an old client and ask, hey, how did that project turn
Mm.
out? And
Hmm.
so today he was telling me that the client was like, "Oh my gosh, people are obsessed with this space," and it won some big award in Europe.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so and so of course it's a fun exercise to go through with this person to
Yeah.
say, "Well, how does that feel?" Like you literally just picked up the phone and asked a
Yeah.
couple of questions on the impact of the
Yeah.
work, and now you have to like protect that memory, right? And keep it
Hmm.
somewhere for when things do get hard and you can pull it out and dust it off and be reminded of, oh no, actually my work does matter and I do leave an impact and I have greater ripples than even
Hmm.
that, right? But closing the loop, such an important tool.
Yes, and everyone needs a praise folder on their phone. Everyone needs a praise folder on their phone, whether that, so if that person that you were just talking to,
Mhm.
even if, since it was verbal, if that person can write it down in like their notes app, take a screenshot of it, put it in their praise folder. Every time we get like a really positive comment on social media that's like overwhelmingly positive, or a DM or an email from a client that said like, I had such a great time working with you, can't wait to do it. Screenshot, praise folder. Because in the art world especially, rejection happens. You don't get opportunities that you thought were close. Budgets do get cut, right? And so, like, going back to that praise folder is a great measure of impact, because even though it's not in the very present moment, it did happen and it's real life and it was impactful. And that's so important to remind ourselves of.
Oh my gosh, I love that so much. So what's in your praise folder? Like what's your favorite kind of thing that
Oh
you
my
go back to?
gosh. Actually, it's one from St. Louis, where I used to live and where Chalk Riot started. And it was a community art day when Prince died. And when Prince died, we held a community chalk-in outside this famous record store. And we invited, and this is when Facebook was still a thing, and we invited everybody to, so it blew up, it went viral on Facebook. And we invited people to wear purple and bring their music and just dance and chalk. And it became this beautiful display of not just even grief for this individual, for the celebrity, and this brilliant artist, but for the stories that came from that brilliant artist and the moments that were shared listening to that music. And somebody wrote a really, really nice note. It was an artist that was working with us at the time, actually, wrote us a really great note. That was one of the best days of her life. And that really fuels my work even to this day. Yeah, probably
Uh,
like 11, 10, 11 years later. So that's the first one that comes to mind for sure.
oh my gosh, I just got
Yeah.
goosebumps hearing you say
Yeah.
that. And
Aw.
yeah, yeah. So that is such a great segue into my next question, which is,
Yeah.
so we talked about the impact of Prince's death, right, and bringing
Yeah.
this community together to mourn and celebrate and
Yeah.
draw.
Yeah.
So who inspires you?
Oh my gosh, so many people. This is a hard question because it's just so much. Wow. I think my friend, this is a cheesy response, but my friends inspire me. We just we're about a year and a half in on a collective art studio called 3711 Art Studios. And it's in Mount Rainier, Maryland, right on the other side of DC. And this was born of an idea that my friend Mark and I had 3 years ago, 4 years ago, that was just like, we need a space to convene. We don't know what it is, but we just need a space. And the first space was a warehouse space that, while lovely and while it granted us so much opportunity to grow and expand, it didn't have windows. It just wasn't it. It
Sure.
was good for short term. And so now we have this space that's full of windows and full of light and honestly just so full of love. And everybody in that studio has their own set of skills and talent that brings so much to our city. And it feels like this powerhouse group of people that I'm
Oh,
just so lucky to be a part of. And they inspire me because I can go to any one of them and with a question or a challenge, and they're all going to offer different perspectives. And it's having those different perspectives are what make us better humans, right?
yes.
So that's my first answer. I think my my next answer is a transportation planner, urban planner by the name of Janet City Khan. She's the former transportation commissioner of New York City and sits on, I believe, is the chair of Bloomberg Philanthropies now, and has had a massive role in the Asphalt Art Initiative of Bloomberg Philanthropies, and is like responsible for example, the pedestrianization of Times Square.
Wow.
She wrote a brilliant book called Street Fight that's all about how we improve our cities for the better. And I haven't had the chance to sit down with her yet, but maybe I'll send her this podcast episode when it's done and see if we can make it happen.
Right, right. Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
I love that so
So,
much. And
yeah.
so one of the things that I share with my audience is like our souls or the universe or whatever you want to
Yeah.
call it leaves like these little breadcrumbs for us throughout our life.
Yeah.
And the people we admire or our mentors or our coworkers
Yeah.
often are providing these breadcrumbs. So if
Yes.
you had to like look at zoom out, right? And
Yeah.
look at this beautiful tapestry of these
Yeah.
amazing cohort fellows that you get to play with
Yeah.
and this amazing transportation professional. What do you think those breadcrumbs are all kind of like telling you? Or maybe what were they leading you to that you didn't see before?
Wow. So working in hospitality taught me to be a good team member and how to manage teams. And specifically, I was just talking about this with somebody the other day, specifically that different people on the same team require different management styles, that it's not always the same. You can't use the same communication styles for every single person. It doesn't work if you're the team leader. And hospitality also taught me how to think on my feet. Friday night rush happens, and all of a sudden you go from empty seats to 50 people who all sat down at the same time. And how do you pivot and how do you communicate? Which is probably very similar to a lot of things that you've learned in the service, like probably very similar. And I think that theater taught me all of that as well. In addition, some of the things we mentioned before, how to manage budgets, how to manage time, how to be in a room with multiple opinions at once and help them merge into one vision. I spent a solid probably 15 years in environmental activism space very consistently. And from that, I learned the challenges of group dynamics and the hardships of the world and the injustices that are omnipresent, and how to work through them, around them, on behalf of them, against them, all of the things. And that plays out in, for instance, how we look at historical research for some of our public art projects. That education, especially around like racial histories in America, taught me that the roads themselves were used as divisive tools to segregate neighborhoods. And so now when we paint those roads, what new stories are we writing, and who are we writing those stories with to ensure that they are just and that we're setting ourselves up for a better future?
Oh my gosh.
So yeah, those are some breadcrumbs for
Oh
sure.
my gosh, amazing,
Yeah.
amazing. And yeah, thank you for illustrating so beautifully the point that, for the person who's listening to this that's in the service industry right now and they are not happy
Yes.
about it, right?
Yeah.
Like there is no experience that goes to waste,
Yeah.
I think, in terms of how the universe or whatever you
Oh
call
my
it
gosh,
is
no.
taking us to, right? And I certainly felt very similarly to you about service industry. I served tables for
Hmm.
years and
Yeah.
I tell people, I'm like, that's where I got my start in running informants is I had 10
Mhm.
seconds to assess a table, walking up to it. How am I going to extract the most amount of money, from them?
Totally.
And so I
Totally.
could like build rapport off of a t-shirt or, something
Yep.
like that. And so for those who are struggling today on their journey, knowing that where they are is not where they really want to be, like there's lessons and opportunity where you
Hmm.
are. If
Hmm.
you honor where you're at right now, it's going
Yep.
to take you to where you need to be. And you're going to be so thankful for those experiences. And so So, guys, Chelsea has a gym date, and we are going to make sure we're honoring it because self care, I know with Humble Warrior, self care is like a fight. But, Chelsea, this has been so incredible. And I was just wondering, are there any other kind of major closing comments you would like to make to my audience?
I would like to make the invitation for everyone listening to embrace a sidewalk, whether it is outside your office, whether it is in your local park, whether it is on your front stoop, and spend 10 minutes, no distractions. So, no phone, no music, no book, no pen, nothing. And literally just sit there and observe. If you're physically able, sit on the sidewalk itself and really notice what's around you. Tune into the sounds, tune into the conversations. I believe that if you sit there long enough, somebody's going to ask you, why are you sitting on the ground? And there's your conversation starter. So I think if you've never done it before, I invite you to try it and to see what you can learn from your neighborhood that maybe you've never noticed before. And I think that perspective can fundamentally help improve our cities.
100% could not agree with you more. We're definitely going to be doing that here in Helena, Montana. I'll tell you that for sure.
Perfect.
So, Chelsea, I know people are going to want to connect with you. Where can they find you?
Yeah. chalkriotart.com is the best place. If you're interested in learning more about working with us or hiring us, there's an inquiry form on the website there. And then we're at Chalk Riot on all the channels. You can also sign up for our newsletter on Substack or via our website there.
Ah, I love it so much. And guys, remember, today is always a great day to support your local arts industry. So please, there are other Chelseas out there who are doing incredible work. And I'm so honored to have gotten to spend a few minutes chatting with you. And thank you so much for sharing your story. This has been so inspirational again. And I'm just super thankful for your time, Chelsea. And we look forward to continuing to support you. And okay, humble warriors, for the rest of you, remember that the world needs who you were made to be. And remember that your inner imposter is actually the key to unlocking your greatest power. So until next time, I'm Alani Bankhead at the Humble Warrior Podcast. We will catch you soon. Love you guys. If you enjoyed this episode and would like some help overcoming your imposter syndrome, check out the free life purpose exercise on my website and subscribe to my blog. If you already know what your life purpose is and are ready to crush or harness your imposter syndrome, then you're going to love my best-selling book, The Least of Us: How Your Weakness Points to Your Greatest Power, available on Amazon and all major book retailers. Or you can hit me up at alani@mightysparrowcoaching.com to discuss private coaching or corporate and government training. That's ALANI@mightysparrowcoaching.com. Listen, there's only ever been one you, and there will only ever be one you. And you have a specific gift to give that the world desperately needs. Don't let your self-doubt be the thing preventing you from living your most joyful and impactful life. Until next time, I'm always cheering you on.